So, should I start right on?
Yes.
Please. Okay. So my name is Otso Lähdeoja. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the Academy of Finland, funding at the Sibelius Academy, University of the Arts, Helsinki. My background is music, live electronic music, mixed music, electroacoustic music. And I've been very active. I did my PhD on augmented instruments, that means traditional instruments with a technological layer added on it. And that was very much to do with interactivity in the sense of sensors and data processing. But today I would like to kind of give another framing of the interactivity question. This comes from perspective of artistic research, which I'm kind of involved nowadays more. And I'd like to propose a discussion or presentation and then discussion on kind of a meta level of interactivity, cultural level of it. I tend to think that technology is culturally embedded in culture. It's an expression of culture, and it can be also studied from that point of view. So interactivity as a cultural phenomenon and kind of the network of its meanings and how as an artist we can position ourselves, or in my case I can position myself in there. The background question also for me is this multiplicity as an agent, defining myself as an artist, as a researcher, but as a researcher also technological, also humanistic. So this is the theme image of today. I'd like to start with a small text, which is kind of a seminar in what I like to bring up to date. It's Uniarts. It's a rather old text now, it's from 1993, but I think it kind of makes the point. I'll just show you the I guess you can't really read it. I'll just let you, maybe you can read just a few words from the beginning, let's say, and then I'll tell you the narration of these few pages. The back row, can you see something? Yeah. Good eyes. I'll also I'll show you the cover of the book and recommend it to be read by anybody who's interested in cultural studies. We have never been modern. And this, well, Latour has provoked the whole school of thought, the whole kind of genre in itself, so it's a huge subject. I won't go into that today. But the argument in the beginning of this book is that he takes a representative situation of the early 90s, which is the newspaper. Of course, today it would be the internet, but in this case it was the newspaper, and he starts reading it, and then he sees a science article which actually involves politics, and then societal issues, then goes into sports, let's say, this kind of things in the same article, and then goes to the next page, and the same kind of hybrid material is there, and he reads the whole paper, and then finally maybe finds something that is pure in a small corner of the paper, like pure politics on the leftist party reunion. That doesn't involve anything else, but it's a specific case. The whole paper is filled with things that get mixed. And then he says that, but at the same time we have, in academia, we have these disciplines, economic policy, politics, political science, technology, biology, and it's all very compartmented and clear, but actually in reality it doesn't work like that. So the whole book is about this dichotomy or the apparent dichotomy of M-frame things and the hybridity of the reality. So hybrid is a term I like a lot and I use a lot, and I kind of make my home in it. I think it characterizes the current situation quite well, and I really feel that it characterizes what I'm doing quite well. But then if we start thinking about hybrid things, then we come to notice that it's not modern or it's not contemporary. It's been there forever. There's the hybrid figure in the human thought that is maybe something like archetypical, if we take this kind of Jung's thinking. It's a figure that has been following us and maybe kind of a deep part of our psychic environment. And this is, of course, in all the mythologies, it's worldwide. These hybrid creatures and their specific characteristics. I'll come to that later. Just next slide about the historicity and the internationality of these things. And then coming to the more modern age, it still follows us. And then some icons of my youth. Now we get to the technological hybrids. So the hybrid figure it has a universal weight, both historical and present. It's a very powerful figure. There's a fascination about the hybridity. There's also the fear and repulsion also. The harpy that we saw on the first page is the woman bird that lures the men and then eats them alive or something like that. The mermaid is similar. It seduces and then you die. But at the same time, mermaid is also an attractive figure. There's the theme of sexuality that is very heavily present in these things, in the hybrid figures. Often it's I wouldn't say often it's the female there, but when the female figure gets hybridized, it becomes kind of sexual attraction, repulsion thing. When the male figure gets hybridized, it's not maybe the same thing, it's maybe more of a power figure. But if you think of the word bastard, let's say in a dog breeding thing, it's the hybrid of two breeds, and then it has a very negative connotation. There's a system of values in hybridity. And in artwork, I find it interesting because myself, I work in hybrid situations. And I actually quite often encounter people who come with comments and they are looking for purity in the art. And they say, oh, this is not something specific, this is a mess. and I think it's very, there's a long tradition of purity in art and pure thinking, let's say, in music, like the pure form, the pure construction of a harmonic progression or something like that, or pure genres, the pure representation of a classical era or something like that. It's very highly valued. But then when you go to these bastard genres or mixed up things, the response from the audience can be, well, at least it makes. I'm trying to think of one comment that I had. We made an installation in a greenhouse, arguing that we will turn that greenhouse into an instrument using the glass walls as resonating elements. And then we added some plastic sheets also for the acoustic qualities. And then somebody came to say that, yeah, but you added these plastic sheets. It's not like, it's not true what you're doing. And I find that very interesting. That since we were not only using the glass but also adding plastic elements, kind of undervalued the whole work in this person's eyes. In this hybrid thematic, I'll present you very quickly a favorite hybrid of mine. This is from Carl Gustav Jung's Red Book. You know, I don't know if you know it. It's quite a heavy tome that he wrote and illustrated. And this picture is by Jung, and it's Philemon, the person that is depicted. And Philemon was a friend of his that came to his dreams, or a friend of, or maybe a teacher. Came to his dreams, and he describes Philemon as a rabbi with what's this kuningaskalastaja, kingfisher wings, and he had a relationship with this Philemon. So Philemon would, in his dreams, would present him ideas that he did not consciously think himself, and he would discuss with him about the kind of the validity of these ideas. Of course, this kind of split personality thing, but also the question of the where do ideas come from is there, and I really enjoy this situation very much because it happens in imagination. And also goes really to the deep questions of what we are, how the psyche works. So that's a sidetrack on this presentation, but it's my personal favorite. Back to kind of ground level of things. As an artistic practitioner and researcher, I work in a network of, well, the immediate network is people, objects, and quasi-objects. Quasi-objects is a Latourian expression meaning things that we can just discard as objects. We were talking about robots. You were talking about robots. I think robot is a very good example of quasi-object. It's culturally kind of active. It's very, it has many dimensions. It's just not just like a pen or, so you can't really define if it's a hard object or maybe a person. It's something in between. And then, of course, if we start enlarging that network, then we go to spaces, society, and ecosystems, which I think, in my case, it's relevant to. If I do a project on, let's say, an augmented instrument, I think it's relevant to do the thing, for first of all make it work, but then to start thinking in what space does it exist, in what cultural space does it exist, is there a social network around it? I see a lot of, in my domain, music tech, I see a lot of research that just presents artifacts or interaction principles, and I'm a little bit tired with just the first level of, okay, this works, and it's a new possibility of technology, but then in that specific area, there's very little opening to what actually does it mean. I made a small diagram yesterday of my own activities. It's not a real diagram because it's not. It's maybe a method of thinking, like putting things in place and what affects what. It's not complete, but what I started thinking by doing this is that this like people activities, I didn't add the objects there because there would be so many of the quasi-objects, but yeah, it's a relational network between this. Let's say my activities include composition, performance, which I keep going, then analog electronics, computer programming, sensor stuff, luthery, woodwork, organizational stuff, and kind of managing things. It becomes very multi-dimensional as an activity and hybrid in that sense. I'm going to present a specific case study here now, which is a project that we're running right now. It's called electronic chamber music. I'm on the guitar and electronics. There's another SIBA music technology doctoral person, Alejandro Montes de Oca, is playing modo synths. I'm a violinist, kind of classical background, and Nathan Thompson's the global music lecturer at the Sibelius Academy. So we made a band, and okay, now I have to backtrack a little bit. We made a band that is based on the use of acoustically activated instruments. And here I have to backtrack into active acoustics, which is I've been active in, which is the subject I've been active in for the last few years. Acoustically active augmented instruments. I'll show you a little article so you have an idea what I'm talking about here. This is an article I published at the Sound and Music Computing Conference a few years back. Let's say really briefly, in my PhD I worked on the electric guitar, adding sensors into it and then sound processing. The argument is to get preserve the traditional instrument interface and possibilities, but add the possibilities of digital sound processing into it and control it through sensors. That was on the electric guitar, and then maybe 8 years later I started doing this, a little bit the same thing, but on acoustic instruments. And the rationale here is to use transducer technology. So structure-bound sound transducers are small loudspeaker kind of technology that you can attach on material surfaces and make them vibrate and turn them into loudspeakers. I did a whole lot of work on architectural sound installations and turning walls and windows and ceilings into sounding elements. And then, of course, it kind of backtracked into the instrument. Okay, I have a soundboard on my instrument, I can make it vibrate, I can drive sounds to it, so I can multiplex my acoustic playing with the electronic sounds. That's the basic idea of this active acoustic augmented instruments. Here you see a little bit of the guitar designs. They have these small transducers. I don't have any with me right now, but have these small transducers inside attached into specific locations that we have studied to be the most relevant, and then there's a loop of signal going out into the processing computer and then back in again into the instrument. So it's a real-time processing loop. Of course, you can also feed samples and whatever you like into those instruments. The electronic chamber music ensemble was made to be a band, kind of test bed laboratory band for this kind of technology. So we have the guitar that I'm playing, we have double bass with the same technology, we have violin that is amplified through violins, and we have Alejandro who plays modular synth through a drum set. So we don't use, kind of the idea is that we don't use traditional loudspeakers at all. We only actuate stuff through instruments. And we also, in this concert, we used these hanging instruments as our PA system. It has an installational quality, but it also has a sonic quality that's very specific. The radiation from this kind of a dipole plate speakers is very different from a conical traditional loudspeaker. And the sound space that we create is, well, it really refers to the chamber music idea rather than amplified music idea. It's very kind of, it has a warm kind of timbre to it, and it's quite quiet. It's kind of inclusive kind of sound thing. So this ensemble was designed to be, so as a technological researcher, I make these instruments. But to make an instrument, that's one thing, but then what instrument for what music, what does it, if I just have a prototype of instrument, then for me it's dry. Take it to a real life band situation, trying to make something with it, then it becomes interesting for me. And even more so that we're actually 4 people kind of trying to get our ways with that. There's a list here of the different aspects of this ensemble project that we do. Also the range of the, now this refers to the hybridity of things, from the manual construction to the manual inaction of the music, but then abstract composition on paper, we did that a little bit. And also the abstracted output as a written research report stuff I do. Here's a photo of our PA system in the hall. I'll play some music now, because we just made an album. So you can put some sounds on this. This is so new that it's actually, the album is in press. We just mixed it, we mastered it. Not last week, but the week before. You're the first persons to hear it. a small second extract for kind of another vision of the sound. Okay, now the idea here is, please imagine this, you have an instrumental ensemble that's playing this live, there's no loudspeakers, and you have this kind of sound. That's the core research of this band. There's no overdubs in those recordings, it's all live in one take in studio. We have edited stuff in there, but there's no overdubs. And that sonic research is what I'm in this project interested in, is that we can go from pretty much, we didn't do like traditional chamber music for this session at least, but it's a possibility to really play just acoustic. But then we can go into stuff that you just heard, or into complete electroacoustics, where we just diffuse sounds through the instruments and play with that. Oh yeah, I had this video. Okay, I'll show you this one. I think it might be a good spot, because this is kind of the. This is a video from a technological research article that illustrates the active acoustic guitar in itself. And actually, now this can give the background of, you just heard the music. Now you can hear see the technological layer. With some interactivity in there. All the sounds come from the guitar itself. There's no speakers anywhere, or traditional speakers. This was, of course, also the idea to use the leap motion sensor for sound as a sensor for sound processing. It's a very multi-dimensional, since you can track the fingers one by one with quite good precision. So that was actually about that. But now you see a little bit the underlying technological layer there. That's the album cover. It's going to come out in March, I believe. And lastly, I would like to talk a little bit on the difficulties of this kind of practice. I believe that most of you are in kind of similar case of mixing things. If we work in the arts domain with the technology, it's already inherently a hybrid situation. So myself, I've kind of bumped into a few issues. One is the value system thing. I already told you about the one comment, the greenhouse installation, but it's not the only one I've seen. And I think for myself also, I'm embedded with these cultural values of purity and impurity. And it's been quite a long path for myself to accept the different things I do as a kind of a combination or a kind of a sound. I mean, sound in the sense of okay, being okay. Combination of things that actually it's a whole. And last spring I wrote an article about this kind of technological research connecting into the musical research. And I had never done that before. And there I realized actually it's one thing, and actually the writing is also part of the same activity in a sense. It just takes different forms. But I had never, for me, writing, as a researcher, writing was one output that is kind of very specific, and then I would take time to make music, which would be a different thing. And connecting these two, as now I start to think as one activity, which has different emanations, has been, in my own mind, very, very difficult, because there's the weight of a certain way of thinking that Latour refers to in his article of compartments instead of actually a hybrid reality. And then if you start to accept your activity as a hybrid reality, then how you kind of inhabit it is my question now. How to inhabit it and how to make it viable also in terms of just as a professional activity. Am I an artist? Am I a researcher? Where is the place for such a combination of things in the map of cultural, in the cultural field? The second thing here, the recognizing the underlying themes. So yeah, it's been really long for me. Maybe we could discuss, because I know most of you should be in a similar kind of situation. It's been troubling for me. What's in, what's out is, let's say, a hiking part of my research activities. I like to hike. Then if you start to enlarge your frame, where are the limits of the activity in that sense? And what can you justify as a research activity to your, let's say, your funding organization? I went for a hike for 2 weeks and had brilliant ideas as a research activity. And then what I'm battling with a lot is this, now when you kind of accept the situation as inherently hybrid and open it to different directions, then the terrain starts to be very big. Kind of concentrating on pure issue, pure matter, lets you go really deep. But of course, if you open the perspective and want to go deep in, let's say, 10 things, then it takes time. And years, I think. The perspective is then maybe a decade. And then that's something hard to accept also, because we get old and getting stuff done or getting a line of research done, a line of work done in a specific area takes time, because you're at the same time doing other things in other areas. And I'm looking for an instrument to present this now as a whole kind of unity. So that's my question now with myself. That's all from me as a presentation. Now we can discuss if you have some comments.
Thank you, Otso. Okay, we already have like Tommy.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the presentation. I've been here for 2 hours and it's been far more worth than coming here. So excellent seminar you have here. What is your perspective to two things, hip-hop genre and mashup genre? Like I know Pogo at least, if you know, making music out of
mashup, you said,
yeah, mashup very small samples from video movies. So they do these, what was the name, hybrid kind of thing, and the hip hop has a long tradition of taking old classic music into this electronic music and rapping.
Yeah, you're stating the question of sampling, basically. Because
yeah, I guess I'm not a musician, so you talk about hybrid. Like, what's it?
Yeah, okay. That's when I think of hip hop, I think of African music, and I think of the musicologically speaking, the path from Africa to the US and blues and then kind of the misuse of technology also, or the using vinyl players the wrong way to start scratching and mixing, which is kind of a recurrent theme in technological research, is that you get a technology and then somebody does something that you didn't intend with it, and then actually something happens, which is very present in the hip hop. I'm not very familiar with the mashup as a genre, but then what I see now in cultural field is there's kind of a lot of amplification phenomena that have been going on. You take a principle that is quite old, let's say sampling and mashing things up, and montage, and then you just kind of amplify it. Let's make a hyper montage that has everything. And I think when I last watched MTV when I was 20, it was already present in the music videos of that time, the mashup thing, like really, really fast montage of different kind of material, and you get this kind of visual. So hybridity in music, or the mix of cultural genres in music is I have not much to say about it because it's an established phenomenon, and you can of course look at it and just note that okay, it's there and it's there since a long time. What I'm trying to get into with this hybrid thing is that music and montage and sampling, okay, one thing, but then if the activity starts to also encompass sound art installations, writing, then it's a larger mix in a sense. The medium gets mixed up as well, or the media get mixed up as well.
First Suopoten Erkki.
Yes, and this is also like somehow this like hybrid strategy, or thinking about this hybridity. It's all seems to me like a meta activity in the sense that you are like raising above the idea or the concept or the aesthetics of music, so that you are looking in the bigger frame, and then when you are starting to enlarge that, so that you are like transforming the traditional instruments and then moving into, as you said, into sound art and installations and that kind of stuff, and also electrical engineering in some sense. Then you are also transgressing the boundaries or making visible the boundaries of music, so what's like traditionally accepted as music, and then we come perhaps into also this like politics and aesthetics and how they are combined in this like system of art and valuation of art also.
Yeah, the meta level is precisely, I think I said it in the beginning, it's precisely what I try to do with this presentation, is to try to kind of approach interactivity from a meta level of it's in there, there's, I mean, the technologies involved are interactive in the strict sense of the word, but actually the framing is much larger, and actually the interactivity itself is not the topic. It's just kind of what it, it's a small element in some kind of larger ecosystem, larger system, and allows for something, but this for something is the interesting part for me now.
Okay, Erkki, then Joonas, then Tuomas.
Thanks a lot. I'm quite interested in your concept of hybridity, because you know our department is now named as the Department of Future Technologies, and it's not really named after any discipline. So we can basically do anything. I don't know if the university would like to have that, but anyway, that's our freedom now. And I think that at the same time the university emphasizes these ideas like multidisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity. But whenever you talk about disciplinarity, so there is a little bit like military or militant tone there, because you know people, I mean, if you have like multiple disciplines, so there is even more fight than with one discipline. And not just a couple of days ago, we started to think with our professors what we actually do, and it seems to be that everyone was very much defending, you know, their own disciplines. They were supposed to be some sort of pillars in the department or silos or something like that. So I'm just wondering, I have now started to use a little bit the word like non-disciplinarity, and I think that it would have something to do with this hybridity. The other thing, and you might comment upon this later, but the other thing is that, you know, recently we started to work with the primary school on how to learn music, how to learn mathematics by music. And I have a PhD researcher there, but I also have a postdoc researcher who works in the area called empirical modeling. And there the idea is that you learn actually from your observations, and then you observe, and then you try to identify like the dependencies between observations. And I'm just wondering if we could use this sort of empirical modeling and then like somehow do the empirical music or you know, something like that by empirical learning of mathematics, because one of the key problems in learning mathematics is that whereas mathematics is done empirically and experimentally and in chaos, it's always taught very in a very disciplinary way and very theoretically. And I'm just wondering if we could sort of release or you know, become a bit more creative in that we start from observations, even from our like musical observations. So I don't know if this brings any.
Maybe I'll comment on the first disciplinary issue. My talk is entitled today. It was or is entitled Transdisciplinarity, which is the term I use, and I identify myself as a transdisciplinary practitioner. But I actually like the hybridity more as a transdisciplinary as a concept. It's not juicy. It's just one of these disciplinarity. Hybridity is much more. It gets into the culture much more easily. But what's in the discussion when you go into academic domain is the expertise versus universality, of course. And when you get to a certain level, of course, you start to, or in order to get to a certain level, of course, you need to become kind of single-minded. That's we're not wide enough and smart enough to cover deeply enough. And that's, I recognize this in my own activity. I would like to be much more skilled in so many things and much more learned in so many things. How I kind of, for the moment, how I try to solve this problem is networking and group activities. The research projects I'm doing now, they involve networks of people and experts in different domains. And one quite nice and right now kind of working illustrations, we have a Nordisk Kulturfond project on these active acoustic instruments, and we have kind of top level musicians there, concert guitar player, consider myself to be a hobby guitar player compared to Petri Kumela. Then we have luthiers, handcraft people, we have electronic engineers. Who else do we have in there? And then yes, we have a musicologist from Oslo, kind of, well, music technology, but musicologist with a musicologist training. And with these kind of networks, I think it starts to work, and that's an interesting. And I also like the social aspect of it, communicating with other people. And then my own role as a as a multifaceted, but maybe not so deeply skilled in specific tasks person is also, I'm thinking of the role of the mediator or mediation. I think there seems to be a need also for people who I can talk to an engineer and the engineer will take me seriously. I cannot do the things that the engineer does as in mathematical terms, but I understand what he's doing in sound processing. And then I can also talk to the humanist, I can talk to the luthier, I can talk to the guitarist, I can talk to the composer, and all these people will actually take me seriously. And I can converse with them on a level of seriousness and on a level of kind of depth that is okay in academic or is relevant. Yes. So that's my take on the disciplinarity. Then your next question was about mathematics and music. I'm not at all trained in mathematics, and so it's hard to comment on that. One thing that came to my mind is that there's a whole huge discussion on music and mathematics. There's also a conference on music and mathematics that's going on, organized by the IRCAM in France, but also another thing that came to my mind is that when you're learning music, if you learn an instrument and it's an embodied activity, you touch a lot, and it's a sensitive bodily experience of things. And would it be possible to learn mathematics through the body? I don't know.
I think that would be also quite interesting. I work quite a lot in Africa, and Africa is in many ways, quite a physical culture, and people are expressing themselves by that. And because mathematics is one language of representing relations between things, and I think that it has quite a lot of similarity with many other things. And this is something like and mathematics is also something like bringing some sort of light into the chaos. And I think this is what what's going on in several other areas as well. But then I think that music might be like some new door to the world of mathematics, so that you can do similar things, and you find analogs or similarities. And of course then music could be represented by mathematics, different things. And but we would like to do this not from the theory, but from the observations. So that when we start when we listen, we become more observant, we sit and we listen to different things, and it's just a matter to somehow just find another anchor. It's a little bit like ethnomathematics, which starts from your cultural, representations, but this is more like maybe from your artistic representations, something like that. You'll come over and see what.
Okay, then there was Jonas and then Tuomas.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I'm not a sound designer and musician myself, and you have been thinking many same things as I have. For example, this using speakers and sound sources. That was very interesting implementations you had with the excited instruments or that kind of thing. And then there's just one thought or question about this purity and impurity, because to me, always when using technology, it always causes some kind of impurity for the process. But I'm trying to think what would be the technology as a pure, because for example that guitar demo, the technology was the video, yeah, the technology was very kind of prominent there, and very much there. But what would that is a really theoretical thought, but what would be this technology be as a pure kind of, because that was a hybrid, and
Well, I think in the augmented instruments domain we're already in the impure and the mixed and the hybrid.
yeah.
But I wrote something on the loudspeaker as a purity, as a representation of purity. And the idea of the loudspeaker, now we talk about the cone hi-fi speaker, would be to reproduce a sound, any sound, to kind of highest maximal degree of fidelity. And that means that there would be an idea of the sound that is pure. It's kind of behind the speaker there is this sound, which is pure and untouched, and when it goes through the speaker, if the speaker is bad, then it gets impure. But if the speaker is good and the response curve is flat, then you actually have the pure sound, and you're like, wow, okay, now I'm in the domain of purity. The approach with transducers is the inverse. If the sound gets colored, it's a non-hi-fi, it's a lo-fi sound in that sense. So, and you can't think of, the fact is that you can't reproduce all sounds through that kind of technology. Some sounds really don't work, and also through this kind of, let's say, guitar body reproduces guitar sounds quite well because it's been acoustically designed to do so, but it might, some tuba sounds or some electroacoustic sounds might not kind of like, okay, it doesn't sound good at all. And one thing that does not sound good at all is space in a space. We just were playing yesterday with one of those guitars, and we played a Bach recording of Petri of Bach suites, which had a big reverberation in the recording, kind of maybe a church or something. It's sounded horrible to have this church in the guitar. Yeah, it's just perceptually not valid. But I think, yeah, the other thing we were talking with Schwab the other day about Siba, and I brought up Ryoji Ikeda as an emblematic artist of digital purity. Also, that's for me, it's kind of striking. He has really hit a spot where the artwork represents a mathematical, and I don't know if you know Ryoji Ikeda, mathematical and aesthetic purity. And he's really hit the spot where it's immediately recognizable. It's very successful, of course, because it responds to the purity idea. It's not, when you see one of his works or hear one of his works, you really immediately understand what's going on. And there's no doubt, there's no mix, it's just like crystal clear. But you have this, it's present, you can encounter it, but yeah. That's what I can say about it.
Because it is interesting to, or important to kind of have this concept of purity or impurity to be able to work on that domain.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you just have some undefined impurity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And purity, which is as well undefined.
And I'm not a radical person, and I would like to be sometimes. I would really like to make some really bastard things. It would be great, but maybe if I find a kind of radicality, it would happen, but still it's very polite, polite impurity at the moment.
Okay, Tuomas, then Suopa.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Tuomas. I'm a sound design lecturer here at VES. And I was thinking about. I've been listening couple of seminars that I've heard. Quite a lot of those augmented instruments and the kind of wave of augmenting classical stuff in Siba, and I've always been thinking that the main thing about augmenting and citing classical instrument is that you have been actually practicing that instrument from so little boy or girl that you actually know it from the backbone, and you have to want to start to figure it out in new ways and start to make new noises out of those and new sounds and new kind of music. And then when you showed the chamber music content, I was thinking about the audience side of things, because I think there is happening two things. It's happening that the hybrid mentality of creating hybrids is making you as a musician and your group as musicians creating something new. It's creating some new sonics and new stuff and new ways of maybe creating music. And I was thinking about the audience side. What is the actual, how does the audience think about, is it the sound, or is it the interaction of the instruments in the concert, or what is the kind of the new thing for the audience? Mm-hmm. And the second one is the recording. If you think that the recording is actual, you have to mic those instruments, and then it goes to actual loudspeakers that are traditional, and the listening space might be at home. You have a vinyl record that is new wave medium again, and you listen to it, and you cannot really tell how the sounds were made if you listen like in pure way. You don't read the article or anything, and that's the other point. And I was thinking that it could also be one answer to the record companies and the way to think about how we actually start to sell music, because it would be really nice if you could kind of like sell a system that you could use for your old Yamaha guitar and put it in there and make your chamber music sound from the excited old instruments that are just their home, or the old piano or something like that. That you actually put your music in different places in home. That's the sound designer's point of view, because we think the ways to put sound somewhere that it might not be before. But yeah.
Good comments and things that we try to figure out also. And the recording of this music is another bastardization of things.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And diffusing it through stereo, traditional loudspeakers. It's exactly what you said. At the same time, it's very comfortable if you start to articulate things through the Hybridity. It's no problem anymore. It's just another one kind of aspect of things. But it's true that we've been thinking, when we started the recording project, I was thinking of binaural recording. But then again, now it's a label that is going to release it and there is going to be a vinyl edition of it also. So then it becomes kind of negotiation of a reality that is already there. In strict terms, in pure terms, the only way to experience that band is in live. That soundscape is to come to a concert. About the what's there for the audience, how articulated to myself, or articulated in the beginning, was let's make a silent electroacoustic or live electronic concert. Because I've been quite much into places where the music is loud, and it's an axis that, or kind of a theme that we've all been through, very, very loud, and the decibel levels have been going up, and the bass gets into the body, and then as a musician, it's a question of hearing. I become sensitive to things, and maybe, well, I don't have hearing damage, but almost. And so it's a reaction to that. I want to have that electronic domain in my music, but why couldn't it be kind of silent, kind of breathing the chamber music-like quality, kind of a campfire type of sound feel? So that was what we tried to do for the audience, but then again we run into compromises. The first concert of this band was in Flow with them, when the Uniarts did the art laboratory. I guess it was 2 years ago. So we played our first gig there. I think there was Iggy Pop was sound checking at the same time, and we were with the acoustic things. Of course, we mic'd the thing and pushed the volume, and it was coming from a stereo PA. But you know, it's the negotiation of things with what is there. But then the concept that I showed you the photos from, then we actually had the time to install our own system. It's in the black box in Musiikitalo, and we know the place very well. We know the acoustics, we know the people who work there, so we could really control it, and that was lovely because we could, for the first time, really hear what that kind of system does. And that was nice.
Okay, there are comments still from Suopo and from Tommy.
Yes, just a comment on the purity aspect of this, because it's like it has many sides to it, because you can think of it in the context of like art versus technology or something like that, but you can also think of it in the context of the performing arts, in a sense that there is, I think, quite prevalent this dichotomy that there is, like in a live performance, there is this pure presence of the performers and the performance of them, so that you have this as opposed to some kind of mediated performance or mediated presence. That's one point. But also, like the purity of the technology and the sound producing technologies, that discussion or discourse is really old, because it has started already from the gramophone era.
Yeah.
So that you all might have seen his master's voice logo, where is this dog listening to this gramophone horn and hearing his or her, I don't know, the dog, but anyway, hearing the voice of the dog's dead master, and it's so convincing and it's so pure and it's so authentic that the dog is believing that he is still in there somewhere. And also this has been going on for over 100 years now, and one thing is that the marketing slogan for Philips when the compact disc or the CD came out was that the CD represents pure, perfect sound forever, which is the promise of the digitality there.
Yeah. Unaltered from reproduction.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, that was a new theme for me, the purity of the presence. And again,
yes, and that also branches into this, Jacques Derrida's idea that the human voice is the guarantor of the pure presence for the speaker.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The concept I showed the photos from, we started it by not being there, and the instruments were playing themselves. And then we entered the stage and started playing. Yeah, it wasn't a huge success as a start of a concert, I think. But actually, it is on that theme of us embodied people being there or not playing those instruments. So yeah, it's there, but I'll get that into the processing, thought processing. That's a good thought.
Tommy and Jonas.
So here's a quick thought for the purity of the speakers. So something that I haven't seen yet, but like we can stream video so that on my cell phone I can rotate it and see where it is. So we would need that for a headset, so that like you are listening to music and you could listen all around, like the surround sound of setting where the different sounds are coming from.
Yeah. People are working on that. It's a thing that is there, and you have, of course, 360 capture technologies for sound and kind of the ambisonics type of thing. Binaurality, of course, it gives you a fixed path that you can't define your path in the space, but it gives can produce overhead performs a really beautiful illusion of space. But I just read a research proposal on that system that when you can navigate a sound space in a convincing way by turning the head. That's not my domain specifically, but I think it's being cooked by some people.
Okay, Jonas.
I just want to a little bit more comment more about this purity of the technology, to consider also the kind of content, technology as a content provider, content creating process. So not just the loudspeakers and the sound coming out of it, but the or how the sound comes out, but the sound itself and the content of it, and also which is and still theoretical and still cannot really articulate it, right? But what is the pure technological content kind of thing? For example, in this when you have this hybrid thing, you have acoustical instruments, and the idea of that acoustical instrument augmented with the technology. What would be this? Okay, what have you added to that before it comes from the loudspeakers, or in this case from the exciter system? I'm not sure if...
Yeah, I'm not sure if I grasped the question, but a response comes to my mind anyhow.
Thoughts or comments?
What have I added? I think what I try to add at least is the human body.
Sorry, human?
The human body.
Okay.
It's been in the focus of my thinking for many years, to make the body what is the word for visible, but in the hearing domain, make the body audible. Yeah, make the body audible in the whole sound, as well as acoustic, as well as the electronic sound. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't know if that responds to any kind of purity or unpurity. I haven't articulated that in that sense yet at all, but at least in my value system, the body is central and very high. Maybe there's an ideal of purity in the body also, in my thinking. But that's what I try to add in there, as opposed to just strict electroacoustic practice. And also body and then network of people, many bodies communicating between themselves, and not by any kind of mediation, like direct communications.
Okay, William and Thomas.
Thanks. I'm William Miles. I'm a light designer, but also a music consumer and lover, of course. Thank you for the presentation. The talk about hybrid stuff is very interesting, and I have to say that the discussion about impure and pure is, for me, confusing. I find it hard to believe in anything pure, but my question is actually that how has using these hybrid instruments influenced your relationship to music? I mean, do you write different kind of music for these instruments? If we talk about melody and rhythm, does it open up a different world? Of course, the sonic experience is different. Like you said, that the concert sounds very different than any other kind of concert. But is the music, the composition? Do you think differently about music with these instruments?
Yeah. I did a whole cycle on the augmented electric guitar for my PhD, and then part of that stuff was a CD. It was a solo work, and I did quite many solo concerts with that guitar, with all kinds of this kind of stuff. And then I showed it around, and somebody said, it was in a lab setting, somebody said, is it intentionally so slow? Like the articulations, and I said yes, but actually the real answer is that it's slow because of the technology, because of it became a complex environment. A lot of things to switch and kind of presets to recall and sensor settings to recall, and the pieces were quite long. It became kind of typical, and I think this is a larger thing also in electronic music, that the shape of things actually is heavily influenced by the gestures and technology that we use. Now this project, in a group setting with acoustic instruments, we started out by doing written tunes. Like it had a kind of jazz flavor to it first, and then it became very fast apparent that the electronic soundscape was underused, not unused but underused in this kind of approach, and then we thought it over. We had a group kind of putting our heads together, like how do we actually manage this? We have these sonic possibilities, but we don't know how to compose for it, and I think Nathan actually proposed. He's a folk musician, and he does a lot of work, collective improvisation, and that's where we went for. Starting to just explore things and listen and respond and abandon all kinds of writing. And the album was actually made like that. We didn't have any tunes. We went to the studio, we recorded about 10 hours of material, and then just kind of compressed into 1 hour of stuff. But I think it has a heavy influence on the process. And also it's kind of, what happens is that we're on a terrain that there's no school for it. There's no given method. These instruments are quite unique. There's some people are doing similar things elsewhere in the world, but I have no knowledge of a group that would use this kind of instruments. Composers have composed pieces for active acoustic instruments. IOCAM is quite active in that sense, but I think it's the only group for the moment in the world, and so there's no given.
What was the name?
IOCAM. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, in France, the Music Research Center, IRCAM. There's a guy called Adrien Mamoumani who has created similar instruments, and they have at least one guitar concerto, one cello concerto. But it's very hard to find out because they have a deal with Yamaha to make this as commercial products, so they don't publish. You can only see videos of the pieces, but they don't tell you about the technology or anything. So it's all going to be the next big thing in the music industry. Maybe. What was I saying? Yes, it does affect a lot.
then probably the final comments, Thomas, have been.
Yeah.
waiting for
I was just about thinking about the purity. Just a thought that in a historical point of view, if somebody started to put nails and stuff into the piano and prepared it, it was kind of very unholy, unpure for some, and kind of like a hybrid or augmented instrument as itself.
Yeah. I think this is a continuation of the
I think so.
prepared instrument phenomenon, and it's also mixed actually. We and other people use physical preparations on the side of digital, and I don't think it makes much sense to draw strict borders on the technologies if it's physical, analog electronics or digital electronics. These categories are maybe not relevant in this case.
Perhaps I should wrap up this conversation by making a notion of related to this purity thing that I came to think about already when Otso was speaking about this famous Finnish dramaturg Outi Lähdeoja, who have been expressing this. I think it was some kind of a comment on a purity on some kind of a theater festival that she has been saying that a theater is as a crossbreed dog at the first place. So from a theater point of view, there is this kind of impurity of mixed elements already embedded. Like there's a long tradition of that, but apparently there was a discussion of some purity, and there was pointing out, hey, historically it's not so pure what you're talking about. It's a mixture and hybrid anyway.
Yeah, that comes to makes me think that actually probably I'm saying nothing new to you, because I come from more music context where this is like, oh wow, it's mixing stuff. But maybe in the other context it's just like, oh, okay. Business as usual, I don't know.
Not this again.
So sorry for not telling you anything.
Yeah, this dichotomy of pure and not pure, I think it's always relevant. It's raising its head, and we should be aware of that. Yeah, what does it mean? Yeah. Okay.
Just a very short comment to what you just said, because I have done the kind of same. I've been a musician and came to the theater domain, and which I enjoy very much, because it is a mixture. It is impure in a way, but that's why I'm so interested about this pureness, because the ingredients themselves are, or can they be pure, and music one of those it has so much the history of pureness and the weight of pureness.
Okay, that's an interesting topic to re-articulate the whole discussion in a theatrical context, which I'm not so familiar with. But I mean, I think I can see the juice in the meat.
Okay, thank you, Otso.
Good speech.